In lesson 2, we set up this very basic input here where I can type in something, and if I hit enter, it will submit to the current page. What we want to do is capture that submit event and redirect it to a new route we're going to call search. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I've got npm run dev up and running. What I want to do is just come inside this search widget component we created last time, and I'm going to add a script tag. Now, this will go ahead and add this as a type of module. It will minify it and do a bunch of other stuff in Astro by default. So what we're going to do is capture the event on this form. Let's go ahead and grab the form itself. We'll grab reference to it with document.querySelector. And you might remember we've got a class of form. We've also just got the tag form. Let's just do that because, again, this should be scoped. All right, so with that said, what we want to do is add an event listener, and we're going to listen for a submit event. Now, by doing the submit event, when they hit enter, or if we had like a submit button, either way, it would actually submit that for us. Once the form is submitted, this event will be fired. So I'm going to grab the event, which we'll just call E in this case, and then I'm going to go ahead and come down here and e.prevent default. And then just to make sure we see what's going on here, let's go ahead and console.log the e.target, which would be the form itself. Now you may have noticed that prettier here, I think it is, or maybe it's the Astro extension, I forget, added this question mark just to say, hey, just in case the form doesn't exist, let's go ahead and check first before we add this event listener. But that's what that is. Okay, so let's come over here. I can either open up the console over here, or I've actually got an extension called Console Ninja that will show me a readout here as well. But as I type, let's come over here and say something. And then if I hit enter, you'll see that I get this right here. And I thought this would console log, but for some reason it didn't. So here we go right over here. Now notice it did not actually update the URL up here. This is from last time. So if I come back here and do the same thing, whatever I type, you'll see that I get this, but it doesn't actually submit to the page because we've prevented the default. So what do we want to do here? Well, what I want to do is capture the actual text from that search input box. So there are a bunch of different ways to do this, but typically whenever I'm submitting forms, I like to use the form data API. In this case, there's only one item, so it's probably overkill, but I just do this as best practice, and so that's what we're going to do. We'll say const form data equals new form data, and I want to pass it the actual form itself. Or I could do e.target, that happens to be the exact same thing. But you can see that what I'm going to get back, if I go ahead and console log this, we run this one more time, whatever I type, you'll see that I actually get an object with several different methods. So I can append, I can delete, I can get the entries, all this kind of stuff I have available to me. So for instance, I could come in here and say, I want form data dot get, and maybe I want to get the entry of search. That means if I come in here, I'm now running the method off the back of that, and here I get the form data, and this is the value of that search. So let's get rid of this console log. We're going to capture this in a variable called search term. So we'll say what we want is that right there, and then let's go ahead and just make sure that it's a string. So if it exists, we'll convert it to a string using that method there. All right, so let's come over here, we'll add this, and let's see, we forgot to console log it, so we can't see what's going on. But now if I do that, you'll see that I actually get a string, and it looks the same as what we did before. But now I'm actually converting that to a string and now console logging it. Now, by default, we actually made this required, so I cannot submit the form. It's going to tell me I have to submit something, but just in case for some reason somebody does that, I can come in here and just say, hey, if there's no search term, or if the search term dot length equals 0, then I'm just going to go ahead and return. So don't do anything else. However, if there is a search term and it's longer than the length of 0, then I want to create a new URL. We're just going to capture this in a variable called URL. So we'll say new URL, and here I want to point it to search, and I'm going to use the base as my window.location.origin. So whatever the origin of the actual window happens to be, that will be the base, and then it'll tack on /search. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because you can do URL search params and add a search param directly on here. And we can set one, and we can call it whatever we want. We can call it search if we want. We can call it Q. Maybe let's just do that. And then what I want to do is just pass along the search term. Finally, with that new URL set and the search param set to it, let's go ahead and change the window.location, and we're going to assign it to a new item, and that would be the URL.toString. Now, because the URL that we've created right here is an actual URL class, I need to actually convert this to a string. There are a couple other ways to do that as well, and I'm assigning it so that you have history in the browser. So in other words, I could also replace this here, but what that would do is not allow you to go back to the home page or wherever you came from. So by assigning it, it basically keeps the history of your movement through the browser. So if I come in here and add like search, now it should go to search, and you see that I have Q equals search because I added Q right here. Now this doesn't exist, so we're getting a problem, but we'll fix that in the next video. Now there's one other thing I want to think about, and that is somebody could add something malicious in here. So like, let's say they had an image and said like on error, and then they ran some kind of malicious code. All right, so let's go ahead and close this down. If I enter this, you'll see that I get all this stuff in the URL. Well, I want to account for anything malicious, and so let's go ahead and strip this out because this is going to be in a URL that somebody could share, and I want to make sure that as I process that data and show it on the page, that we don't have to worry about something like that. Now, in this case, I don't think there's a whole lot you could do, but it's always a good idea to strip out any possible malicious code from user input. There are several packages we can use here, but what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up the terminal here, close this down, and then we'll type npm i, and I'm going to use a package called DOM Purify. All right, and then npm run dev. Now remember that Astro makes these modules, so that means I can import here. So I could import DOM Purify from DOM Purify. Let's go ahead then, and when we get our search term right here, we're going to go ahead and wrap this in DOM Purify .sanitize, which is a method that comes along with it. We're just going to sanitize that string. In other words, what it's going to do is basically strip out any possible malicious code. So if I came back in here and did our same thing, like on error, and then I did something, all right, close this out and I hit enter, you'll notice that it stripped out a bunch of that stuff. So you can't really do anything malicious. And there are a bunch of like customizations you can add to DOM Purify. I've done a video on it in the past. You're welcome to check out. So we've handled the form event. We've stripped out any possible malicious code, and we've redirected to our new search route. That does not yet exist, but it will in the next lesson, lesson 4.